as the noxious weed program coordinator.
Thanks. Al Johnson.
Hi there. I am on the steering committee of the Wild Rivers Coastal Alliance and been there for quite some time. I'm a retired land use lawyer, and I used to represent Bandon Dunes in all their entitlement work before I retired. My main interest is at present has been the donut hole in Bandon.
Great. Thanks for coming today.
You bet.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Nice to have you.
Okay. Sherry, we got Brittany and Ryan from Willamette Valley Forestry.
Hi.
Hi.
We got Kate Iaquinto from National Fish and Wildlife Service.
Hi, everybody. I'm the refuge manager at Bandon Marsh, and I work on the south coast of Oregon Islands as well.
Thank you, Kate. We got Matt Swanson of Swanson Ecological Services. Say hi, Matt.
Matt?
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
We don't have his video. Is he just on phone?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's see now. I wish it keeps switching up my list here. Okay, we've got Richard Taylor, and Richard is the co-compliance officer for Bandon.
Yes.
Yes, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Then we have Alex Enriquez. Alex, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Legislative Director to Representative Caddy McEwen. She's sorry she couldn't join you all this morning.
Great, thanks for being here.
Of course.
And we have Connor O'Dwyer from Curry County Road Department. Say hello, Connor.
Good morning. Yeah. Hi, Aaron. I'm the applicator for the state for ODOT, not for the county, though.
Oh, I'm sorry, Connor. Yep.
Oh, my goodness. No, it's fine. Good morning.
Good morning.
So is he from ODOT?
Yes.
That's
Okay,
correct.
perfect. All right.
Sorry, I messed that up. He just is down here with us. So I was like, he's Curry County.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
Yep. Okay, then we've got Lucy Allison from Coos Watershed.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lucy.
Let's see. And Nick Shepner. Nick, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. Nick Shepner, Park Manager for the board's Beach Management Unit for Oregon State Parks.
Great, thanks for joining us today. And Robin Harkins from the Coquille Tribe. Robin, say hello.
Good morning. I'm the Director of GIS Services for the Coquille Tribe, and you won't see me on video because I'll kill my internet connection.
All right, well, thanks for staying with us. Oh, and one of our highlights today is just joining. Carrie Perosco. How you doing?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I was having audio issues, but Carrie Perosco with Oregon Department of Agriculture Noxious Weed Program. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Carrie.
Morning.
Morning.
Carrie, you just having trouble hearing us? Must be.
Yeah, Carrie, can you hear us?
I think I've resolved it. I'm using the phone for audio and my computer for video.
Okay, we don't have you on video.
She's just turned off, I think.
And then Paula Thompson was saying she doesn't have the sign in, so I sent it to her, but this morning I did that with Lucy and she never received anything from me. So if someone else could send the agenda to Paula Thompson.
I'll
from
send
the
it.
steering committee. Okay, just in case she didn't get it.
Okay. And then Joel Price, I saw you join in. You want to say hello, Joel? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. Joel Price, Oregon Department of Agriculture, Biological Control Entomologist.
Great, thank you. We're going to be hearing more from Joel through the agenda today, so. Okay, I just sent the message to Paula, so hopefully she'll get that soon. Okay.
There's Carrie.
And then do do we have Mel on the phone from Coquille Watershed Association?
Hey there, yes, this is Mel. I'm the executive director at the Coquille Watershed.
Great, thanks, Mel. Mel, can you spell your last name for me real quick? Because I'm typing your name in and it's eluding me.
Dunn, D-U-N-N-E.
Okay, got it right. Just too early for details.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so hopefully Paula will join us soon. Did I miss anybody out there that I'm just totally not seeing in my list? There's Paula. I'll get her in here real quick. Hi, Paula. Welcome to the meeting.
Hello. Thanks for sending me the invite.
Yep. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. I'm Paula Thompson. I'm with WRCA. And I think Marie is actually going to log on for just a short little bit, and then she's going to have to go. So
okay. Great. Thanks.
Great.
Okay. All right. Just gonna give it one more minute, see if we get anybody else in here. So we are recording the meeting. Hopefully it lasts, our 1 gigabyte of space lasts the whole 3 hours. I think it should, given the calculations I've done on other meetings we've done. So we'll see what happens. All right, I'm just going to read through the list one more time so everybody knows who's here. We have Liza Ely from Windward Gardens, Mel Dunn from Coquille Watershed Association, Sherry Lair, who's hosting the rest of the meeting from Coquille Watershed Association, Matt Swanson, Swanson Ecological Services, Al Johnson on the steering committee for WRCA and is interested in the donut hole, Alex Enriquez, who is works in Caddy McEwen's office, Representative Caddy McEwen, Brittany and Ryan Hughes from Willamette Valley Forestry, Carrie Perosco from Oregon Department of Agriculture, Connor O'Dwyer from ODOT, Joel Price from Oregon Department of Agriculture, Kate Iakito from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Lucy Allison from Coos Watershed Association, Nick Shepner from State Parks, Paula Thompson from Wild Rivers Coast Alliance, Richard Taylor, the Code Compliance Officer for the City of Bandon, and Robin Harkins from the Coquille Tribe. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the meeting today. We've got a pretty big agenda. I'm going to pass it over to Sherry. But for those of you that need to share screens, I did enable participant screen sharing, so that should be okay, but I'm here to work it out. So if you guys need to chat or have something, you can direct those things at me. I'm in charge of the virtual world this morning.
Thank goodness.
Well, I won't tell you how my day went yesterday because you would have 0 days. So, well, it's a new day. We can soldier on. So, Sherry, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Erin. Welcome, everybody. I'm in a slightly new role from State Parks. They laid off 70 positions and mine was gone. And so I was very lucky to land with the Coquille Watershed Association, and part of our work is funded by the Wild Rivers Coast Alliance, and therefore they're funding me to help with the gay group. So I will be, I think, quite a bit more active than I was able to be with State Parks. So I'm happy to be here and to see you all, and glad you could show up today. It's always exhausting to get yourself into another Zoom meeting, so thank you. Our first speaker today is Joel Price, and I'm super excited to have him. Joel and I have been able to go out in the field and look at biocontrol together, and I'm really excited for him to share this with you. He didn't mention to me how small the biocontrol is, and so I brought a little loop to look at them. And I don't know if you've ever tried to use a loop to get your face into gorse to see a little bug on a thorn, but it's quite an experience. So I want Joel, if you could introduce yourself a little, and then go ahead and share your screen. Let us know if you have any problems with that. And we've slated about a half hour for Joel to present, and then 15 minutes or so for questions. So thank you. Go ahead, Joel.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, I already introduced myself a little bit, but Joel Price, I work in the noxious weed program for Oregon Department of Agriculture. Next month, I will have been here for 3 years. Prior to that, I spent a few years in Colorado working for their Department of Agriculture and Biocontrol. I'm really happy to be here. I have done so far a lot of work on gorse around the Bandon area, and I'm excited to tell you all the good news. So yeah, let's get started. So first, biological control of weeds. The whole idea is that you're bringing a natural enemy that it is lacking from its native habitat. So with gorse in Europe, when it was introduced, let's say via seeds, it's not going to have a leaf feeder on the seeds when it was introduced. So it's lacking a lot of the specialized insects that feed only on gorse. The photo here is of a weevil on yellow star thistle. Most of what I do, most of what biocontrol is in rangeland weeds on the drier side, working with weevils. So gorse is a little bit different project for me, which is good. I really enjoy this project. So this is all part of that enemy release hypothesis, that if we can introduce enough of these natural enemies to gorse, it's going to get a lot of that pressure on it and force it to compete with the native plant species at that same level, because the natives obviously have plenty of bugs on them. Our most effective programs, like the Dalmatian toadflax, we have multiple agents on them. So gorse has multiple agents on it at this point. There is the spider mite that still flares up from time to time, but I guess probably more importantly, the seed-feeding weevil on gorse that impacts actually a lot of the seed. We have been looking at that, and we continue to look at that when we have time. Take samples and see what proportion of the gorse seeds being eaten by our weevils. So we're really happy to have that one. But we need to continue to stack pressure onto this plant, because obviously it's a big plant and it's got a big root system and it's very resilient. And if we can get seed feeders, leaf feeders, root feeders attacking all levels of the plant like we do with Dalmatian toadflax, then we're going to have a very successful program. So in the future, there's possibility of finding, say, a root feeder. Gorse is kind of a nitrogen fixer, so it has little nodules on the roots that have plenty of nutrition in them. We just have to find the right insect that's feeding on those and work with our overseas collaborators to get them. So just to give you a little bit of perspective of like who I am and what I do, I work a lot with APHIS, and we cover the entire state of Oregon. So this is the 2020 activities that I did this year for collection, release, and monitoring of all of our different agents. We have around 80 different biocontrol agents that we work with, probably about 10 that we work with regularly. So a lot of those little points on the map down around the Bandon area, for the Gorse project for 2020. So it's a growing focus for us. 2019, about 4% of our activities in the state in the world of biocontrol were focused on Gorse. And this year, 18% of my time was only on Gorse. And that could be collecting or releasing or monitoring. So as the years go on, as we work with this new agent and possibly find more, that piece of the pie is just going to continue to grow. But, you know, traditionally I work on a lot of Canada thistle, Russian knapweed, and of course the knotweeds. If anyone has questions on the knotweed as well, at the end of this, you're welcome to ask. So part of the story of the Gorse biocontrol is that we kind of got shut down for quite some time with red tape as far as the entire biocontrol pipeline in the United States. Other countries like Canada were a little easier to get biocontrols through and always have been, but the US for a time got pretty scared. The decision makers got pretty nervous about litigation, and a lot of this was shut down. But there's enough groundswell support. You can't just eliminate an entire tool in the toolbox in noxious weed control because it's such a big problem that things started shifting again and moving again. I mean, the cost of inaction, this is, you know, me standing at the north end of the Highway 101 infestation near Baker Beach. I mean, there's a lot of tourists that come through Oregon. We have a lot of beautiful natural resources, and to have that entire hillside, you know, in Gorse is not a good look for us. And so there's really a lot at stake. If we become paralyzed by fear, the cost of inaction is quite great. So this is a table of all of the biocontrols that have been approved lately. They go through a very rigorous and long process I'm not going to get into detail on, but it takes like, well, 5 years roughly on average to get permits once all the research is done to get an agent through. So you can see the Gorse strip on there. I should say Gorse Thrips. There's no, English is a funny language. Sarcothrips staphylinus is the name of the agent that we've been working with on Gorse. So it was first submitted and approved by TAG, which is the kind of the expert panel, in 2014. And then we didn't actually get permits to release it out into the field anywhere in the country, but specifically Oregon, until late in 2019. So it kind of caught us off guard. When you have to wait that long, you kind of lose hope, and some things get kind of put on the back burner. And then when the permit finally comes off of somebody's desk, all of a sudden you have to run 100 miles an hour. So that's kind of what we did with the Gorse Thrips. And there's others, you know, that are coming up. Part of the process is tribal consultation. You know, there's a lot of tribal lands and native plant resources involved in the Gorse areas. So I participated in an intergovernmental cultural resource meeting in Corvallis this year to talk to some of those tribal groups about biocontrol generally, but specifically on Gorse. My main collaborators for this whole project, like I said, APHIS PPQ has been a lifesaver, as especially as ODA has gotten really whacked budgetarily by a lot of things. APHIS has been able to remain funded and fully staffed, and they have stepped up and helped me a lot with the rearing and releasing and collecting of the Gorse strips. So those folks are based out of Portland, Oregon. And then we're working with the county groups or well, CWMAs, SWCDs, and crews in Lincoln counties. We're working with Wyatt Williams, Oregon Department of Forestry, Parks and Rec. Sherry, was with them and has since changed, but we're still very happy to have the support of Sherry. And most of the work up to this point has been done, and this project is still largely being overseen by Fritzie at Oregon State University. She's the professor that went through the 10 years of rigorous research to get these babies out in the field. So at least for the first little bit of this project, as we're getting them out of the lab and into the field, Fritzie is really the expert on this. And yeah, working with the U.S. Forest Service as well. So yeah, as I said, Sarcothrips staphylinus, it is a single species of thrips that started at the OSU quarantine facility. We had them so long in quarantine that they became like lab rats. And I mean, insects are actually pretty resilient to becoming genetically kind of bottlenecked in the lab. They're really cool that way, but still, when the permit came through to we're going to put these things out in the field, we wanted to make sure that we had the most robust agents possible. So as part of the Western Governors Association Invasive Species Initiative, I was able to travel to Hawaii and collect near Hilo, Hawaii, more of the Gorse thrips. Same species, just fresh from the field. So they were hopefully genetically more robust. And we mixed them in with our lab colonies here. Because yeah, all of these agents with insect short generational time, they can become regionally adapted quite well. So we were worried they were regionally adapted to the OSU lab and not our Oregon winter. Let's see. Oh, this photo, by the way, I took this photo at the Halekala Ranch in Maui, where their entire ranch was nearly taken over by gorse. They had lost a ton of production, and it's a very old historic ranch that had a lot of value at one point, and now they have to invest. I think Jordan, the ranch manager, said that ranch, that private ranch, spends $500,000 a year just on reclaiming their land from gorse. So they have a crew of about 3 or 4 guys that go out every single day, and they just chop down the gorse with this heavy machinery and then come through and spray it the next day. So that is what can happen if we don't take advantage of these things. Biocontrol is one tool in the toolbox. The gorse patch that is left there, you can kind of see there's some flowering going on. When you compare that to what it flowers like in Oregon, that's nothing. And that's in large part because of the biocontrols. But even still, we still have to take other actions as well, like mechanical or herbicide, to really knock it back where we want it. This is what it looks like. The thrips, they are, if you were to look at other thrips, I guess they're distinguished because they have those cute little white wing pads on the middle of their back. So they're not all flighted. Only when you reach high densities of these guys do they decide to produce some wings and take flight and fly off. But in the meantime, they stay pretty localized to where you put them until their populations start booming. Also, their abdomen's pretty rotund and kind of has that silvery appearance because of all the little hairs. So they are somewhat difficult to see, as Sherry alluded to. So that took some time. Once Fritzie turned these things over to us, we needed to be able to identify them. And so it took some time working with APHIS personnel, using a scope to recognize the agent, We wanted to release only the adults into the field. We didn't want any juveniles or eggs or anything that could be confused with another species. So we painstakingly went through all of our cages and aspirated by hand, or by mouth, I guess you would say, each individual from the colony to ensure that, and then we triple checked each vial to make sure that that's the only thing that was going out the door. And as Sherry also mentioned, you know, that little eye loop, we use the head magnifiers like the jewelers wear once we go back out into the field to monitor for them. So that photo on the right, there's just some little black specks on that gorse that look like flakes of pepper or something. Those are them. Oh, yeah, so this is just a few photos of us taking them out of the quarantine lab at OSU, working with the local landowners like the Bandon Dunes Golf Course and the watersheds, and getting these sites set up. So once we imported them from Hawaii, we had to remove all the contaminants, because there's always going to be some spiders or an ant or some other thrip or something that makes its way into there. So we had to keep them in these rearing chambers and basically kill off all of the contaminants and only take out the good guys until we were confident. To do that, we acquired a couple of new Percival growing chambers. These chambers cost like $15,000 a piece, so we're really happy to be able to have those at our disposal. The Thrips generation time was really, really fast. You know, even in a greenhouse in Western Oregon, it's just so gray. Without a lot of heat and a lot of light, you know, the generation times slow down, the population slows down. Because our permits came in December, we had to put them into these chambers, crank up the heat, and get their populations booming for field release in the spring. So it was unfortunate timing, but luckily, due to some technology, we were able to compensate for that. So we have provided, at this point, Thrips to California. It's always a good idea to not put all your eggs in one basket as far as lab colonies versus field colonies. So we ship some to California. They have them in labs there as well now. Probably Washington will get some next year to start a series of colonies up there. You know, these state programs are not as stable as we would like to imagine that they are. So we like to mitigate our risk that way. So for Oregon for 2020, between Fritzy and I, we released 3,725 thrips at 8 different locations, up and down the coast, at the Bandon Dunes Golf Course, City Abandoned Property, U.S. Forest Service, ORPD. This is a photo of basically what we did. We had to have thrips-proof netting, yet breathable, in each vial with a little bit of host material on there that was clean of any other contaminants. And put those little black specks on there, 100 per vial. So the first releases ever were done this year in Oregon, and out of our 4 cage colonies at our ODA greenhouses in OSU. So we primarily selected sites that were easy to get to, because we really wanted to keep a close eye on these, that if they were to disappear, we would want to know where and when and why. You know, Fritzy's based out of Corvallis. I'm based out of Salem. And so even though there's a lot of gorse down in Curry County, it's just a little bit too far, especially during COVID times. We weren't allowed to spend a night in places for a lot of this. So a lot of this was day trips, going down to Bandon. So we wanted to monitor a lot, and we did. So the 7 main study sites were monitored June, July, and August. We did timed counts at the location that we released them. And thrips recovery was recorded for every major study site. And out of all of the releases, like every bush basically that we put them on, 22 of the 32 release locations, we were able to find them right away when we came back, which is, in the world of biocontrol, if you're doing over 50% of them taking, that's good. So this is kind of on par with what we would expect with any of them. And we found, you know, it is a bit of a needle in the haystack, especially on the first year, 186 thrips across all the sites. So it doesn't sound like much, but the fact that we are finding them is in the first year is really good, because it's not going to take much time until those, they have an exponential growth rate basically with their reproductive periods and their ability to produce offspring. Those 186 next year are going to be thousands and thousands, year after that millions. So that's kind of how it goes, if it's going to be successful, and I think that these are. So one encouraging thing is that like in Hawaii, where they have the thrips there, all of their gorse is growing up on the volcanoes. Their gorse is not coastal, for whatever environmental reason. And so it's just a different story here. And a lot of our gorse is kind of inland as well, which is a different microclimate. So we wanted to put some of these guys out right on the beach where they're exposed to the salt and the wind and the cold and everything. And because some of our agents just don't like that ocean spray. But I went back to the Lincoln County beachfront spot and found plenty of thrips still there months later. So I was really pleased to see that. And I guess we'll see how they do over the winter. But that was really encouraging. In the more harsh environments, they persisted. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm always in need of seeds or starts. So if anybody gets bored, they're welcome to collect more seed for me or dig up some starts if you're headed towards Salem, because we keep these things in colonies year round, and in the field is one thing, but in labs, these agents go bananas and they really hammer these plants. And so we actually have to cycle through a lot of plants that get killed off by the thrips in the greenhouse. So it's kind of a challenge to keep enough plants going all the time, to keep these colonies going all the time. So here's what we did when we released them, just kind of some strategy going forward, is that we looked for plants that had that freshly growing material on the tips of the branches. That stuff is very supple. The thrips work by puncturing the cells and rasping at them and then sucking up the cell contents. So if you have more woody tissue, it's going to be more difficult for them to get started. So to make life as easy as possible for them, we targeted this kind of growth stage of the plant. And we would just slip the vial on over the tip of a branch and they would crawl right off within a minute or two. For being so small, they're actually pretty active and smart, and they can go right to the plant. And we flagged each branch and went straight back to that exact branch over the next several months to find them. And like I said, they were pretty loyal to where we put them. So that made it easy to find, relatively easy to find. Cliff stabilization study in progress. Yeah, we got some good support, put up some signage. A lot of the gorse that remains in northern parts of Oregon are because of this problem of erosion, where landowners are nervous about removing all of the gorse and having erosion problems. The great part about the gorse thrips is, or 95% of our biocontrols anyway, is that they work across a period of 10 or 20 years. So if you have the gorse slowly diminishing, if you have any kind of native plants in the area, which almost all of these cliffsides do still have a contingent of native plants there, they will backfill and you're not going to get big patches of exposed soil. So we got permission to do these releases in areas where they would not allow herbicide treatment. So that was encouraging, and we are happy to be able to offer something for those scenarios. This is kind of what it looks like if you wanted to imagine what the damage is from the gorse thrips. So the gorse at the bottom, that branch is fresh, green, lush, kind of untainted. The one on the top has a lot of speckling. There's white speckling where the cells have been punctured and rasped and sucked dry, and then you just got the whiteness of an empty cell wall, basically. And then you have little black speckles, and that's just the frass, which is insect poop, where the thrips have just been pooping as they're feeding. So there's the white blotching, the black speckling, and then, if you look closely, especially on the photo on the right, you can kind of see a few little yellow dots, and those are the nymphs that are crawling around. They're not as easy to distinguish as far as a species, so we only look for the adults to be 100% sure what we're looking at, but the nymphs can be spotted as well, and they're quite active as well, moving up and down these branches. Yeah, so just a couple more comparison photos of the healthy stuff on the left and the stuff that's been attacked on the right. And yeah, you have to zoom in quite far, but I think, if you have a real healthy set of eyes, you can kind of see this little white wing pad on the thrips that help distinguish them. So yeah, I want to leave a lot of time for questions. I will entertain any and all questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. So that's what I got to tell you.
Thank you, Joel. That was great. Anybody have some burning questions about this biocontrol, or I think we all want to hear a little bit about the knotweed too.
This is Al. I had a question for Joel about the gorse removal in Hawaii, where once they remove the gorse on the ranch there and spray it, what do they do the next 2 or 3 years to keep it down?
I think they come back through and do more spraying. They do helicopter spraying through there as well, but they are pretty confident now with their techniques that they don't require as much follow-up treatment. With that, they just beat the heck out of it with those rotating drums on that machinery, and then come through and spray it the next day. So with that, they get a really good kill rate. And we went to some sites at their what is it? Like Native Lands Department or whatever. And there were some gorse that they had done those treatments to that were coming back the next year, just a little sprig here or there. And at that point, they can just come back through with a backpack sprayer or on a four-wheeler and just kind of target the few that are resprouting. But I think they just thoroughly, well, the plants there are also, like I said, somewhat weakened by the biocontrols already. So when they have all of those together, they just don't come back, I think, like they do here in Oregon, let's say, or like you see this hillside where, those plants are just so darn happy.
Thanks.
So 2 questions, Joel. One is you think that the efficacy of the next day spray is similar to cut stump application of herbicide, and that's something we really haven't tried, the 1-2 punch with the masticator and spray right behind, but we have a major project for the city of Bandon coming up, and you think that that kind of efficacy would help our efforts in doing this? Should we try a test plot of mastication followed by herbicide here? Because we are usually herbiciding a year later or 6 months later.
Yeah, when I was working with those different groups over there in Hawaii, and they talked about coming in the next day and spraying all this stuff that had just gotten beat up, it was a little counterintuitive to me, because I thought, why would you spray all this material that's just been ripped up? But yeah, that's how they do it, and it seems to be effective. I would need to dig back into my notes or reach out to those collaborators again to really kind of get some, like, their instructions on really what they're using and how they're using it.
Yeah, I think that Brittany and Ryan and I would be really interested in that, since they're a primary applicator in this area. And so we would like to know what their surfactants and all of that. If you can connect us up with that, that'd be really helpful, because we're getting ready to do an area that is a test area for the city of Bandon in District 1, that if that's a new tool in the toolbox and timing, or there's a new herbicide that's effective, we'd like to see that done. And a lot of the area that we will be doing will be masticated because of the fact that they're on tribal cultural sites. So we won't be using any pulling or plucking methodology, and we can combine that. The second question I have is, in these gorse starts that you would like to get, what is your premium size, shape? What are you doing about transferring soils? We have SOD here. And so how do you want your starts delivered to you?
So the starts can be basically the smaller the better. All plants transplant a little easier when they're smaller. They go through less shock that way. As far as the sudden oak death, I don't know how to address that, other than I don't know. We just transfer them into our greenhouses, and so it all stays on site. But
just hate for that soil to get loose when a pot got dumped out, or you know, whatever. So I could try pulling some seedlings and rinsing them and see if they'll stay stable in that situation and for how long. But that's, you know, something that we will have is a whole lot of seed bank coming back very quickly. And so we had the potential for harvesting for you in some fairly easy sandy sites.
Yeah, a lot of the starts that we've tried to dig up were actually attached to some really big old roots. They were individual starts, actually. So digging them up has been quite difficult. But when we have, if you just rinse off the roots entirely, they seem to do quite well. And with that method, they're just so resilient. I've had so many that I thought were toasty dead, and then they just resprout. So yeah, however you want to do it to keep from transporting that, I think that would be fine.
Okay, well, we'll work on that. We certainly have plenty of robust seedlings to share with you.
Joel, how is the growth from seed for you? We've never tried to grow gorse, of course, because that would be a lot safer way to get it to you. We could mail it and not have to deal with any of these issues.
Yeah. So from seed, number one, I mean, when the gorse seed, it's just, well, Sherry, you and I talked about it. It's just on the plant for such a short period. You know, it's either not quite ready yet, or it's just bursting out and falling all over, and they're gone. So for me to be able to collect them is difficult. And then once I get this seed, you know, like 50% of them have been eaten up by the biocontrols, you know, so I'm cracking all these pods and half of them are just full of garbage. So it takes actually quite a bit of pods to get a decent amount of seed. And then the germination rate is not that great. I mean, to be fair, neither are our greenhouses here. But yeah, so it kind of takes quite a bit of seed collection in order to result in some adult plants.
Yeah, with native seeds, when you collect them, the type that are full of weevils and other bugs, you just put them in the freezer for a bit so that they can be stored without being eaten. So that might be another thing that would help. And those of us who live around Gorse can definitely catch the seed. And just put your hand out the back door at my house.
Yeah.
We can work on that. So now that we know that you need that, we can get, that can be a byproduct of that. We might be able to get some homeowners and property owners involved in that, as well as just kind of an awareness of the whole cycle in the city of Bandon. You know, we started it here, we're spreading it to everybody else. What can we do to contribute to the reversal of that? So that could be part of our outreach and education.
Yep, just make sure when you ship the seed, obviously, that it's in a double sealed fashion, right? So that, yeah.
Other questions about the biocontrol?
Yeah, this is Erin. So I had kind of two questions, and I think maybe I just missed the detail. So one's just a clarification. So this thrip, does it just eat the plant material, thus stressing the plant, or does it also eat the flower heads?
Yeah, so Gorse has a species of like a western flower thrip that attacks it that you'll see on Gorse flowers. That's not the same thing. Okay. This is specifically feeding on the spines and the branches. Basically anything that's green. It's not going to be feeding on the wood or the roots or the flowers, just all the green material.
Yeah, and then so I was just wondering, you mentioned that they were really loyal to the branches that you put on them. So did you see much like spread, or are we just like not to a population density where they want to go out? Are you concerned that they won't like leave where we put them?
Yeah, so like I said, at least in the first year, it's actually really handy for them to stay put. So many of our agents we put out and they take off for miles and we never see them again until like 5 years later. And then I'm like, oh, here's where they went. But yeah, once they reach a certain density in the next year or two, that's when they produce those, like with ants, they're called alates, where they have these winged forms that are reproductives and they take off. These are so small and they're rather hoppy, they jump around like little fleas a lot. So if you get a decent wind, they'll be blowing all over the place. It's just right now within the same year that we released them, they're just kind of hanging tight together where there's other thrips of their same species around that they have mating opportunities. And so I don't worry too much about dispersal, certainly not within the same contiguous patch. But, that is kind of part of my job generally anyway, is that if something is not moving far enough, fast enough for at least our humans' liking, then I come in and I move them around. So in this case, it's pretty easy. I think in New Zealand, what they do is they just go where it's heavily infested, just with a pair of trimmers and just clip off some branches that they're crawling up and down on, and then drive down the road a little bit and shove them into the bush, and they crawl off, and pretty easy once they're out there. It was very labor intensive, like I described, to get them out of quarantine into the labs and out of the labs into the field. But once they're out there, I'm not too worried about it. I think we can compensate for any lack of dispersal in the first couple of years.
We have enough monoculture in Bandon to support the entire experiment with nobody helping it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's, that's kind of how I feel good about Bandon, because, if one landowner or whatever land manager, I want this strips on my property first. It's like, well, I mean, these things have such transportation corridors, it's going to be everywhere soon. So I'm not worried about where they go first, because that entire Bandon area they're going to be able to get around.
Well, it's important also that we notify our rights of way people and in the vector areas, spray patterns and so forth, so that if a project was going forward, we make sure that we don't have a great colony of it going on there. We don't harvest some before the herbicide applications or whatever, So as I say, I think just knowing kind of where you tell us there's great populations going, maybe we're using that area instead of herbicides, we're using the biocontrol in that area, and then isolating our herbicide use with ODOT or county roads or city abandoned utilities, any of those guys, to try to get them to understand where the damage is already. I'm sure we'll see it visibly, but where the damage is already productive.
Yeah.
So they can.
Yeah. And I, when and where possible, when you can use an herbicide, that's obviously more energy intensive and you're going to get a larger result from it. So I encourage people to use all of the tools, but certainly these first handful of nursery sites we're going to be very protective of until, if we lose some thrips on this road or that road or whatever in 5 years, it's going to be whatever. But for right now, in these first 5 years or so, that's when we want to be quite protective.
I had a couple questions, Joel. This is Lucy from Kuzwa. If you could say again, you were talking about bank stability and how the thrips would, chew the stems. And so there wouldn't be any action on the roots that would destabilize the bank. And then you said something about infilling. I didn't really catch that. So would the tack be to just go back and monitor those sites? I'm thinking about, the residual seed bank in future years.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're not root feeders, and because they're essentially just adding ecological pressure to that plant, it's going to reduce the competitive ability. So if you just can imagine a weaker competitor over time is going to lose ground. But we don't, like with tamarisk leaf feeders where they're defoliating plants completely multiple times per year or something, and it leaves all this barren, empty skeleton plants. That's not going to be happening with this gorse strip. So we don't anticipate any really empty ground on there. And then as far as the resprouts, the younger plants are more susceptible to death. They're more susceptible to the biocontrols. The biocontrols often prefer the younger plants because they are more easy to puncture. And so we think, let's say you have years down the road mature stands of gorse with a lot of thrips on them. If you were to come in and do mechanical control and you have the resprouting, all of those strips that are kind of still lingering in the area are now going to be desperate to find a home onto those little resprouts, and they're really going to target those and result in a lot. We're hoping a lot of those starts, a lot of those little baby plants getting hit hard. So that's where this one I think could work in concert quite well with mechanical control once the thrips are really established.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. I had another question about, do you foresee that land managers would be able to put in for projects with ODA for thrip release? And if so, like what would the parameters of the project site be? Like, is there a minimum size of the area? Things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the future holds as far as putting into ODA, but the parameters, it would kind of have to be a novel environment, right? So if it's in Bandon and we already have several release locations around Bandon, it's not going to be a really high priority for the average patch for us to be putting releases there. We want to get these things out to novel areas where it's far distant from any satellite populations, or it's in a unique setting, or maybe there's a endangered orchid there, you know, something like this where other treatment methods aren't possible and it's a more unique circumstance. So yeah, as far as like patch size, I don't know. I usually tell people that it has to be about the size of a tennis court in order for it to be worthwhile, I think. But yeah, in this case, right now we're just mainly focused on establishing these nursery sites and tracking them. We're not looking to do a lot of expansion right now, so that will be in 2 or 3 years down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Joel,
So, Joel,
okay, you're
our
out of
time
time,
is-
Sherry. Okay.
our time is up, but we had a presentation with John Sweet next, so if he hasn't joined, then we can continue asking Joel questions. Erin?
Yeah, I don't see John, but 2 other people did join during the presentation, so I'd like to just real quick hit those folks up. So Jody Ray, would you like to introduce yourself?
Is she muted?
Yeah, just give her a sec. Jody, we'll come back to you in a second. Who signed in as NCWA? Looks like a watershed association. Anybody know who that is?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Well, if you guys want to speak up later, feel free. Oh, Jody. Okay.
Are you there?
Yep. Who are we talking to?
Go ahead.
John, is that you? I feel like I heard John Sweet's voice.
Is that Jody?
I think maybe. Jody Ray, are you really John Sweet?
Nope, this is Jody Ray.
Oh, Jody Ray. Okay, sorry. You sounded a little like John, so we were waiting for him. Jody, can you tell us your affiliation, please?
Oregon Department of Transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so until
Sherry, hold on a second. Somebody just showed up, and it might be John. It's a 396 number. Okay, who just entered?
This is John Sweet.
Hi, John.
Good morning. How are you?
Hi, John. Welcome. We are all set to hear from you. Very excited that you could join us today.
Okay, I'm sorry I was having both the prompter talking at the same time you were talking. I just got unmuted. What did you say?
I said we're very happy to have you here, and you're right on time. So we would love to hear about the intergovernmental agreement.
Okay. Well, it is in place finally. I apologize for the delay in getting that done. The Board of Commissioners approved it some time ago, and when that was done, I erased it from my list of things to do. What I had not realized, but there was still some paperwork to be done. It had to be done by our county council, and I think they were working with the Bandon city manager at the time. Unfortunately, we had both our county councils, the head council and the assistant, took new jobs partway through this process, and so we lost traction. And with the Bandon city manager gone, I don't think anyone there really realized. I'm not sure about that the necessary paperwork wasn't being done. But it's all in place now. It takes a while to get the county codes revised, but effective February 1, 2021, we'll all be on the same page. We'll have the same code restrictions that for that parcel for land within your urban growth boundaries, or within the Bandon urban growth boundaries that the city of Bandon has. And so the city of Bandon will be free and able to enforce their Gorse policies on county land that is within the Bandon urban growth boundaries. Again, that date is February 1, 2021. And the reason for the delay is that any change in county codes has to go through a process and a waiting period.
Okay, so does anyone need some background on this? Maybe John could give us just a little background.
Oh, okay. Well, I will try. You have some land that is, virtually the cities. It's called urban. It's within your urban growth boundaries, but outside of the city limits. And some of this land is already being developed, has been developed, but it is under county jurisdiction. And we do not have the same Gorse control policies, or had not, that the city has. And so this land, which is contiguous to and almost a part of the city, is not in the city boundaries. So you had the city, when I say you, I meant the city of Bandon, wasn't able to impose their Gorse restriction requirements on this land that was legally outside of the city and in the county. But now you'll be able to do that effective February 1.
This is terrific news. Thank you so much for your efforts in this, John.
Well, I'm sorry it took so long. It was a great idea, and I apologize, but we just weren't paying enough attention to the details. But now it's we're headed in the right direction. I'm excited. This will be a major step forward for the entire county, and particularly the city of Bandon.
And I just want to say to John, I have the 35-year history with trying to get this done, so I feel a little bit like I might have laid an egg. And one of the things I want to say about working with John on this is that the one ordinance without the other really weakens our ability to control the vectors going in and out of the city, which is one of the big issues that we've had. And so as we go through districting in the city of Bandon, we're not going to have a reverse problem coming back into the city of Bandon as we control this urban growth boundary. But I will say, John, just to encourage the county UGB understanding, there has been a massive wave of voluntary compliance in the UGB already in the Sunset City area. And quite a bit of gorse has been removed. I would say more than 20 acres of gorse has been removed voluntarily, just with people understanding that it's now coming to them. So this is great when you can get voluntary compliance. And even though the county may feel like they're behind, I will say that the actual citizens of the county that know that it's coming are already on board and spending quite a bit of money and time getting it done. So it's very encouraging.
It is encouraging to me. I think a lot of you there know that I spent most of my life in Bandon. I grew up in Bandon. And, you know, gorse was so difficult to control that, you know, the conventional wisdom was you can't do anything about it. But your group has really changed the way people look at gorse. And it is something that we can control. And in my view, you've all spearheaded this activity. But that combined with increased property values, new equipment that can get in and actually mulch the gorse down, and chemicals that can kill it, which were not available in when I was growing up there, have made a huge difference. So thank you all for your efforts. It's as I said before, not good just for the citizens of Bandon, but for everyone in the county. And hopefully over time we'll be able to expand even further and broaden the outreach. So thank you all.
Thank you, John. We are all pretty awesome.
I agree. Okay. Well, with that, I'll get back to work.
Al has a quick question for you.
I just wanted to say, John, this is Al Johnson. Thank you.
Hi, Al.
Congratulations. Hi. John and I and Jim Seeley and Marie got together on this, 2 or 3 years ago. And when it was identified as a problem that we had this area inside the urban growth boundary and outside the city that was 250 acres of gorse just sitting there, as it still is, as a potential tinderbox for the city of Bandon. And Jim was a real point person on this as well. And with John's help, we put together a policy whereby the city and the county recognized that this area was a wildfire risk, and also that it was part, and still is part, of the city of Bandon's long-range supply of land that's planned and zoned for residential use. And so what we've had going for some time is this the kind of idea that eventually there would be master planning in the donut hole cooperative project between the city and the county that would deal with the fire hazard and the gorse issue and hopefully the housing issue at the same time. And we came up with this idea that eventually this could be sort of a resilience district because it's up and out of the tsunami area. It's close to the highway, it's close to the airport. It's got a lot of potential. So if anybody's interested, we do have a couple of briefing papers and slideshows all about that potential future process for the donut hole. And I'm hopeful that at some point, maybe this year, next year, year after that, that will be relaunched and eventually become a healthy gorse-free part of the city of Bandon.
That would be awesome.
I'm glad you mentioned Jim Seeley's name. It's sad. I get a tear thinking of him. Sad that he's not here to see what is happening.
It is. He would be delighted and thrilled. Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say.
Anyway, I'll let you all get back to your meeting. Thanks for all your good work, and I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And I will say that Jim's impact on that vision was without a doubt the game changer. And as the the representative from the Caddy McEwen's office will understand how hard that he worked on that and how hard that hill was to climb for him, because I think he started about 7 years before it actually started to move to start working on that. So I get it, Al. I was there with Jim from the beginning. So yeah, it was a big, long run.
Yeah, and I would say that Jim probably had great confidence in all of us that this movement would continue just as strongly. And he's our official mascot now for implementing so many things. So before we move on to the next speaker, I wanted to see if Joel was still on.
Nope.
I see him listed, but he's muted and I think he might be gone. But I want to say that was a really great presentation. We didn't really get a way to complete that talk, but it was really great. And I think we still have a lot more questions, so we can maybe put those all together for Joel, and I can share his email and we can move forward with that. Now I see Bear Slothauer has arrived, and we had you slated for 10 minutes, and I don't know if you want to do the whole 10 minutes or have Richard Taylor talk as well, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Bear, and keep in mind you're muted.
You're unmuted.
Now I'm unmuted.
Thank you.
All right. No, the things down from the city's point of view are going pretty well. People, I getting generally good response from people from the letters I've sent out. And this shutdown is going to be a bit of a setback because we can't have the class, but we're going to go ahead and try and film it on Friday, but we'll see. And but like I say, I'm really surprised that most people are just, okay, what do I need to do? And I've received a lot of, there's no gorse on our property letters back. And so things are going pretty good. Well, I see Brittany and Ryan in there going with, doing it at the Powers. And I think that encouraged a lot of people. And I'm also getting a lot of response from people that are not in District 1. Actually, some District 3 people along the cliffs and stuff, wondering, okay, how do I do this? And anyway, so the response has been really good. Does anybody have any questions? Richard, have you been doing any enforcement?
Yes, quite a bit actually.
Oh,
from
good.
From the end of the summer and into the fall. And it's been a kind of major focus of what we've been doing, but without any particular guidance except referring people to the GAG website and trying to nudge people along who were letting the gorse turn into a big lawn on their property that had spiky stuff on it. So yeah, I'd be interested to work with you and learn more about what's happening in terms of the districts and so forth.
Yeah, and I noticed that your desk now is right next to mine up in the planning department. So that should make it easier.
Yeah, it's going to be happening.
And in fact, yeah, I'm looking forward to that because I think that not now, but eventually we are going to need a little enforcement. But like I say, most people are pretty good. So,
Richard, I would really love it if, and I don't know what hours you work, but this is one of the hopes that we have, that you will attend some of these training sessions that we're trying to get out to the public and so forth. And we actually had put your predecessor through quite a grill, And so it's your turn now. But
Yes.
we have abundant information for you. And we just need the city of Bandon employees, as many of them as possible, to give the same message. So as we roll this out, everybody is saying the same thing, from a utility worker to a person in Parks and Rec, to a person, anybody, subcontractor, anybody, all has the same message. So we're very anxious to get anybody involved in the city of Bandon to not look like they don't know what's going on or they're
Right.
not on board. So that's really, it's not going to be effective to district if it looks like somebody escaped our clutches. So
Mhm.
we
Well,
need your help.
There's plenty of concern among the populace. I mean, we get a fair number of complaints that people just call up and say, my neighbor is letting the gorse grow and it's going to be threatening my property. And
Mhm.
so the compliance have been very good. There's property owners who are way out of the area and they're familiar a lot of times as absentee owners that this is something that happens annually or more frequently, that they're going to get a call or a letter and they have to take care of it. So
Chair and Richard, could, maybe everybody else knows this, but could you tell me a little bit about the district system, which district, where the districts are and what the sequence is?
Okay, the immediate things going on are District 1 is the South Jetty. And that's the one we're working on now. That's what we hope to get going big time in January. District 2 is like the center of the city. And I think that there's a lot more properties there, but there isn't as much gorse. I don't think that we're going to run into a lot of big time gorse stuff in District 2, but there are a lot of people there, and I just hope we can get responses. I think in District 1, probably after the video goes up, give it a little while, then I'm just going to start cruising around to properties, and some of the worst ones, just write extra letters to people. Like it's, again, there isn't all that much. There's a lot of gorse, but it's not on that many different properties. And so it shouldn't be really hard to do that. District 2, like I say, is the center of the city. District 3, I think, is the one that's going to be the big fight. And that's along Beach Loop Road and down the cliff onto the beach. And because people are, well, that's not my property. That's the county or the Fish and Wildlife or the state or whatever it is. And I think we're going to have some real problems along there. And I've already heard from a couple of people along there. I already had a estimated $20,000, and I'm not paying $20,000 to get rid of the gorse. And I think that might be a little excessive. I can't think of anything that's worth $20,000 there. But anyway, I think 3 is going to be the big hassle, because it's where people are getting into some serious money, and thousands, and instead of maybe even 10,000 instead of 1,000 or 2, or even a few hundred. So we're looking forward to, I'm not looking forward to getting into District 3, but District 1's, like I say, I've gotten a lot of them. Oh, and by the way, Brittany, Ryan, and any other contractors who are here, what's going to happen is I've been getting some letters from out-of-state people that are going, we can't travel, we can't do it, we can't look at it. And so what I said for at least a couple of them, I said, what I'll do is I'll look at it, and when people start moving down there, I'll get some of the contractors to send you an estimate on what it takes. And they said, fine, just send it.
Yeah, that would work really great for us if for out of town people. We've met with the one couple that wanted to buy a property out in Bandon, and they had a bunch of gorse on it, and they wanted to know how much it cost. So we gave them a quote, and if you just had like a list of addresses and an email, when we show up next, we can just run by and look at it and send them a quote.
Do you have a property map so that if you're looking at somebody's property, you know pretty much where it is?
No, usually we use you for that.
I need to interrupt here a minute, and maybe you guys could have that as a side conversation.
Okay.
We did use up all our time, and we want to take like a 5-minute break here. If we could, just before we go, Richard, could you just give us a quick rundown on your background and when you started?
Started at the end of
Please.
June and had literally no background in this at all.
Okay.
But
All
some
right.
skills that were transferable, some familiarity with the city of Bandon. I've been a minutes clerk for the Planning Commission and other commissions, so I've followed some of what's been happening for the past couple of years. And I was familiar, having seen Liza at one of the work sessions, and learned a lot from that.
All right. Well, we are here to support you.
One more quick question for Bear is, are you getting any help, or you need any help in applying for outside funding, grant funding that perhaps people could access?
Not yet.
Okay.
We would love to support that, the districting effort. Also to, I think one of the points funding wise is that until the city of Bandon had a plan and actually was initiating that plan, I think it really was hard to get funding for it.
Yeah.
But at making it a priority vegetation management project for the city of Bandon, and having the cooperative thing with the county makes us hugely, positioned now to do things we've never been able to do without that stamp of approval from the city council and the county government, saying that this is a priority and we're throwing our own resources at it as well. And we have a plan for how that's going to go forward. So I think a lot of check boxes towards funding have been done now. The next question is who will help us decide where the money is available and get grants written for that. And we're hoping that through GAG and the City of Bandon partnership that we can start working on more of that. This year was kind of an upside down moment, and losing Jim was a part of that, so we're hoping this year to hit a stride.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. 5 minutes, back at 10:30 to talk about the winter education series.
Okay.
For about the last 21 years is battling Gorse in one way or another, battling/managing it. So when we build a golf course here, we basically clear the entirety of the surface, leave select patches, and basically in the past we've just burned it, buried it, disposed of it anyway. What this could potentially do for our resort is take a noxious weed, turn it into a usable material that we could then use on the golf courses in our divot mix, or to kind of increase our fertility, increase our CEC based on what we find with this biochar. So it's exciting to us at the resort knowing that we can take something that's been basically a nuisance to the town of Bandon and the surrounding area and actually finally use it for something that potentially has a positive use for us.
The firebox is simply just an air pollution control device. So it's designed to just control the smoke and control what you're burning inside of the firebox. You start the fire inside of the firebox just like you would with a normal campfire. So you'll get a torch or some sort of flame and you'll ignite some good burnable material inside of the firebox. And then what it does is that the air comes out of the curtain and it's powered through a diesel engine or electric motor. And that diesel engine or electric motor is going to power the fan, and then the fan's going to blow the air through the manifold, the air curtain on one side. And then that air curtain is going to flow from one side to the other, bouncing off the opposite wall. And then once it bounces off the opposite wall, it's going to go down towards the center of the firebox in a circular motion, what we call the secondary burn chamber. So inside of that secondary burn chamber, what happens is the smoke gets pushed down into that secondary burn chamber once it hits the air curtain, and it burns off, so just heat waves come out of the machine. So here we have a burn boss where it started off, and then with the United States Forest Service and Air Burners Incorporated through a PRADA agreement, so a PRADA agreement being Cooperative Research Agreement Development Act, dwarf the char boss. So the char boss is what we've been named between the two of us. So being a joint venture, that creating a machine that not only can work as an air pollution control device like it has for the past 4 years. Now we have an air pollution control device that not only is going to solve the problem of getting rid of unwanted wood waste, but you're also going to be able to create biochar at the same time, which as I'm currently finding out today that has a value to the market, to municipalities, to cities, and to the average end user that's going to reapply it in the land. We make many different sizes of fireboxes. This is one of our smaller sizes. So being the char boss or burn boss, this one will do around 1 ton an hour. And then the larger fireboxes will do up to around 13 tons an hour. All of our machines are mobile. So whether you move it with being pulled on with a hitch, or whether you want to drag it with an excavator or a front wheel loader, they're all mobile. So for pipeline clearing and land clearing, that's probably about 30% of our sales with land clearing companies, 40% of our sales going to land clearing companies where they're just moving the machine from one place to the next, only with the same piece of equipment that's knocking down trees.
When we burn the piles, especially when we have a pile of that size, the intensity and duration of that pile may actually alter the soil and make it implantable. So by doing this, we're actually going to have the opportunity to consume that material and not detrimentally impact the land. So like those big piles that you may see in, let's say, outside of a children or someplace like that, you know, where they're the size of a small apartment house. They could actually heat all through the soil to the point where we can't grow anything in them. And then they're just not trees. So we've essentially taken that away by having this kind of equipment available and eliminating that potentially detrimental effect. Secondly, we have a lot of opportunities where we don't have the ability to sell anything, especially this material, this kind of material. If we could sell it, maybe we could offset the cost of doing the field production.
So once we get the research results back, we'll send them to you, Erin, so you can put them on the website. And we did get confirmation last week from the Forest Service, though, that did say that there were no viable seeds that they found through the biochar. So
perfect.
Good.
That's
How did they do, Paulo, with the DEQ stuff? Was it meet their expectations? I know that was the biggest hurdle.
I haven't heard back from any of the research results at the end now.
Okay. That will be the clincher on whether that machine in the bigger format would be useful here, is how much rigmarole you have to get through to get the DEQ approval.
Permitting, yeah.
Because the permitting was really cumbersome in this case, but hopefully once we have a pilot, you know, example of it, DEQ will be more smooth about moving them around.
That's what we're hoping. We told them that would be the biggest obstacle in the area, so.
Paula, could you speak to the use of biochar a little? I found that pretty fascinating.
Other than what's in the video, I don't have a whole lot more knowledge about the biochar. So I know that when they were talking about being able to use it on the golf course, and I know that unless we put it through another process to get it finer, that we would not be able to use it in the divot mix. So we did learn that after the demonstration was over.
And I did talk to Seacoast Compost and took them a sample of it. They're an organic biodynamic compost creator here in Coos County that uses waste from various sources to create this amazing soil amendment. And they were concerned about the size of the char pieces themselves. Again, that's partly because of the mixing. So it would probably need to be driven over by an excavator in the most brutal version of it, or run through some kind of screener or crusher to create something that is a marketable, amendable soil additive. So, but as far as carbon footprint and cation exchange, it's a huge plus. Anybody who's really into gardening would love to have access to this stuff, but we would not want to come across it in our soil in this chunky format. We would be looking for something that would tilt in and create the impact, less impact on the tilt of the soil.
Paula, this is Al. Is that the size machine that you would foresee being available on the coast, or would it be possible to get one of their larger units over here, or would we even need that?
Well, according to Ken and Troy, who was the operator, we'd have to use the much larger unit to make it work for us for the Gorse size that we have. It was just too cumbersome trying to get the pieces broken up into small enough pieces to fit in the box. But they felt like the portability of the model would be really useful to go out into the field, maybe for other feedstock. So.
And that was true too with the rights of way workers. ODOT might want to weigh in on this a little bit, but talking to Jensen's Tree Service and people that do a lot of work for ODOT and the power companies and City of Bandon as a subcontractor, they felt that it could be useful, but they weren't going to do a ton of paperwork to get it done. And then they wanted a big enough machine located, say at an ODOT wayside, because they have, you know, every 10 miles or so they have a ODOT wayside. Someplace centrally located like that, where they'd have a big enough area and fire suppression available, et cetera, to be able to use it. They'd have to still move the material, but if they could it's not something you could park necessarily by the side of the road. It'd have to be in a turnout, you know, and then how far the cars from it. They had a lot of questions in the mechanics of using it around the public and, you know, leaving it overnight and all that kind of stuff. So we did talk pretty actively about the use of it, but I could certainly see when ODOT's doing something like the massive gorse removal that they did just by the dump at Beaver Hill. Thank you very much. That, for example, would have been a great place to put it at Beaver Hill and have it there to create a marketable product at the Beaver Hill refuse site for everybody to use, or to locate it on an ODOT site and then collect it from there to transport to another place. Transportation is the biggest issue of the materials themselves, because you're handling it more than once, and gorse doesn't move very well. No brush does it, you know, really any of the woody materials, just hard to, you know, that's the cost. So, but if we were doing a district at the jetty, for example, we located it in one location there, we could easily get that material to it in the city of Bandon and burn it all in one place and produce a fabulous soil additive for the people that were getting rid of their gorse. It would be awesome. You know, it's about regional strategies and mobilization, basically, and DEQ.
I think I remember they thought this machine would probably sell for $95,000, the 1 ton capacity that we saw. Does that sound right to everybody? It was experimental, but that's what they would guess the cost to be. So it's it would be a really big decision, especially to go bigger.
Yeah. I've also looked at this from the perspective of the transfer site folks. I think they might be the best partner here, but I think as things move forward and if the DEQ paperwork gets cleared up, it is worth sitting down with some of the bigger players about how, because, you know, the transfer sites, as Liza mentioned, and I have this issue down here, you know, take a lot of green waste, and particularly one of our transfer sites in Curry County is located within a sod quarantine, which further complicates the issues there. And they have their own issues with burning and DEQ. So I really see this as a really great tool for those purposes. Big ones are made to go on roll-off trucks, which, you know, folks like CTR already have. So you could, you know, find a bigger site to, you know, nearby your project, I think. So yeah, a lot of little logistic things like that. But I think tapping into, you know, those industries that could use it themselves, but also have the capacity to rent out that, just like they rent dumpsters, you know, is a big deal. So, or even Coos Forest, you know, those types of groups. But the other thing I wanted to mention that they talked about with the biochar is the with the sod quarantine. So to make it a merchantable product, I had a good conversation with Jim Archuleta, the Forest Service gentleman in the video. So currently, at least in Curry County, where there's a sod quarantine, you know, specifically, even though the burner technically is hot enough to kill sod, as it rolls out that little conveyor belt, as soon as it's out in the air within a quarantine, it's considered contaminated again. So there's definitely some talk. He mentioned someone they were talking with about how to encapsulate that. So when it comes out and it's hot, you know, it comes out and gets quenched in something that's completely covered. So then once it's quenched, it can go right into bags. At that point, it can become a merchantable product. So certainly the concerns about texture, you know, come into play there. It maybe have to be a post-purchase situation, but there is that little detail that's a big detail for that. But certainly, you know, I think for on-site application, like a larger landowner, you know, particularly in maybe some of the small woodland folks where charcoal size isn't as big a deal, very useful at the moment. But yeah, the commercial part has a few more hiccups. So I just wanted to let you guys know that part as well. But awesome.
Okay, I think we could talk about this for the next hour.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting in the possibilities and uses, but I think we have one more video to see, Erin.
Yep.
And then Liza's gonna guide us through this. Thank you, Paula. You were right, that video said everything.
Okay, Liza, you ready? I'm gonna get your video going. Okay.
I had to give it to Erin to do.
Yeah, I liked your screen sharing, Liza, with your papers.
It's not happening. You know what I'm saying. This is one learning curve I'm not willing to go on.
Oh, look at you go.
Just after the coffee break. Okay. So the difference between that video and the prior video is this is a video that is designed to do two things. One, it's designed to speak to the homeowner who's nervous about what might happen with something they're unfamiliar with. So this gives them an instructional way to see the process, the timelines, and something that might parallel something may encounter, for example, in the city of Bandon in District 3 or District 1, and gives them really a, like, here's what's going to happen when it happens at your house kind of a video. Secondly, for those of us that are in the trade, you should be very impressed. That was Miss Brittany there on the bluff. If you have any questions about Willamette Valley's forestry abilities to do this, I've done gorse removal for probably 30 years with inmate work crews, and it's extremely labor intensive and takes 10 to 20 men to be able to accomplish projects like this that Brittany and Ryan and their crew accomplished, just using basically four guys and a couple support guys in that. So it was a pretty labor intensive to do it by hand. It has to be done that way, but it just needs to really show people who are afraid of the machinery how effective the machinery is. Also to talk about aggregating grind sites so that multiple hand cut projects could be ground in one location quickly. And also for the equipment guys to give them a shout out for their efficacy in grinding. It's like such a easy one-step process with one person involved, very low impact, very good for cultural sites. The tribe's happy with that methodology. There's many reasons to use them, but the material that's left behind is a highly effective suppression material, as well as something really easy for follow-up sprayers to walk on. And as Brittany and Ryan will tell you, that trip hazard of all these little tagged ends of the gorse and all that, and the idea of spraying cut stump in a 60-mile-an-hour wind zone that they were dealing with is really dangerous, as well as really cumbersome. So the mulching, the idea of being able to maybe mulch and then spray the next day, and some things like that we're trying to tweak. Those are things that really people need to see that in this instructional video. That's basically what we're trying to do, is to really look at from the bird's eye view what goes on in an actual grind and hand cut site, and to see where you can use both. Also to highlight how you can selectively pick vegetation, native species that can go on to dominate as the suppression begins. You now have your reclamation already started with step one by preserving those either seed bearing or vegetative materials that will come back and take over that site for you in the future. So just, mowing everything down isn't a good idea either. So we like to see people that are, kind of working around that. And on the steep slopes, as Joel said, it's important to have some of that stock available. The Powers family also, this is the videographer that I'm going to use for these, for the webinar versions of my lectures. Jim will slice and dice and cut those differently in a controlled environment indoors. It's really hard for the learner that is an outdoor person to be sitting in a PowerPoint. And this is a great tool that can be used for a learner that maybe is new to this type of equipment or thinks they want to become a spray applicator for gorse, to really see what the terrain can look like and what the reality is if you're a hand cutting crew or a machinery crew that you may be needing to work that closely together. And so this is a great partnership to show how the two different entities are needed in two different applications for gorse removal specifically. But often terrain drives the boat on any type of noxious weed control, what you're going to get into and what species you're trying to preserve, which a hand cutting crew that's educated can do if they know what to cut and what not to cut. So the machine operator also has to be able to identify that from his cab, so he knows he's getting into knotweed or whatever, and he doesn't want to get that mixed up into his head and carry it to the next location. So really important to get this information in the hands of equipment operators so that they don't make us a bigger mess when they encounter these other pockets of English ivy or other things that may spread in the suppressed mulch mixture. There could be a lot of seed and other things in there that we're carrying to new locations, as well as pieces of root or whatever. So anyway, this video has a little different audience and a little different reason for existing, but hopefully it'll really show people. We can talk about it after and show some of the pitfalls and some of the reality checks of terrain and wind conditions and cut stump application and working around right next to a right of way so you could see that cars could go right by there. So we were really addressing several things, and it was a great that Fish and Wildlife was just on top of it. They moved when it was time to move, and that's like, you know, moving the federal government, you know how that is. So Kate was awesome, jumped right in there. We had an opportunity. The Powers family we skipped them when we did the original Coquille Point. So there's a lot of history with me personally with this family, going back to when we got U.S. Fish and Wildlife to take over Coquille Point. This family helped me get that done at that time, and it's nice to work with the heirs of that land and finally get that one piece done that Jim and I both agonized over whether to skip them because they were unwilling to do it. Their concern was erosion. If there was anybody, it was on the conservative side of erosion, it was the Powers family. So it was a great win to get that done and to be able to use it actually as an instructional video on a historically low slope failure, highly eroded embankment that we knew was problematic. So I think it was a good test case. Any questions about that project or the video?
I have a comment.
I think you should.
Go ahead.
I think you should add just a little ending with Brittany and Ryan having survived.
Yes.
So like they didn't get injured.
Right.
They still had it, you know, all their limbs and
they came back to a gag meeting afterwards.
We're available for more.
You know, and available for more.
Yes.
Because that looks so intimidating to me. Like even just holding your balance, much less hauling and chainsawing it. It's pretty amazing.
Yes, it is.
So thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bear, go ahead.
I've seen in a couple of things on videos, they talk about, you know, spraying. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize, that not all sprays are like Roundup that kill everything, that you can go ahead and plant like grasses shortly afterwards and then still spray them. And if it's a broadleaf killer, it won't kill the grass. And I just somehow a lot of people don't realize that there are different types of herbicides.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be mentioned somewhere in this whole thing. Because you talk about replanting and they go, well, we're just going to spray it and kill it. Well, that's not true. So
yeah, we tell people that when we do work for them and stuff too. And I have to tell everybody it's not a one and done thing. But yeah, you know, it's just, you kind of got to tell everybody the same story over and over and over and just keep repeating yourself until maybe everybody will know. But it's common. You have to tell everybody that it's normal, Bear. It's normal.
That's the point of making this video, is to give Brian and Brittany some kind of a tool where they can send people to the GAG website, or Richard can do that with enforcement and say, here you go, here's exactly what will happen because you have a steep slope. These are the two types of work that would be done on your property. We know how to do it. We've done it before. You know, you're not inventing the wheel here. We have, here's an example of two contractors that we have that are really reliable, fully licensed, ready to go. You know, we have answers for you. You're not stuck, you know. So hopefully that's what we showcased both Jensen's and Willamette Valley Forester here, and also cemented, I think, a partnership between you guys, because Jensen's doesn't want to do the handwork, and they really want to do the spraying. So Jensen's is really happy to bring the equipment in and grind anything that they produce.
I have another question. Why, and I think I heard the answer, but I forgot. Why start from the top and drag, you know, you drag what you can up over the top, but why work from there on down, dragging your extra through the gorse? Why don't you start back from the bottom and kind of clear it as you go up?
We normally do.
Oh, okay.
Actually do that.
That's right. I do remember you saying
in this case, we had two different property owners. The city of Bandon was also a third property owner in this. So they actually, a lot of what you saw was either Powers property or city of Bandon right away in the middle of thin air right there. And the Powers were very concerned about the equipment having any access. I could have ground a lot of that slope from the bottom up, I'm just saying, and made them a trail in and given them a place to drag down through. We didn't have the opportunity to do that because the limitations put on us by the property owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question, would it be realistic to think about maybe doing a 1 acre or 5 acre or 10 acre sort of a pilot project somewhere in the donut hole?
Oh, love to.
So all we have to do is find the 5 acres or the 10 acres, and we could learn an awful lot about what it would take to do the other 200 acres if we could just do that much. And I was kind of thinking of the area out back of the fire department there might be a good place to start it. So anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, you know, the donut hole is a piece of cake, but I will tell you, with the 40 years ago, I actually learned how to drive a D9 cat in that area, and it is loaded with fences, dead cars, old motorcycles, refrigerators, mattresses full of metal springs, and everything else, which is death to these masticating mowers.
Oh.
So just saying, the donut hole has its own challenges because it has old foundations of houses that burnt or weren't, you know, we can't see them. They're under 15 feet of gorse.
Wow.
So whoever goes out there is going to be brave and have to have an equipment repair budget of epic. Yeah.
Maybe it's time for a little LIDAR work out there so we can find those things.
Yes, yeah. So it would be great to have a little bit of, you know, and I would love to start behind the fire department. Absolutely. That would be great. If you can get Lanny on board for that, I think I could get a bunch of people that would be willing to help out with that for sure.
Great. Oh, maybe we could park the big char machine back there then.
Yes, perfect.
There you go.
Perfect.
Well, thanks. That was really great. We have a little time for odds and ends, and I wanted to ask Carrie, because she has been so very quiet down there, and ask if you would be willing to talk about the Gorse demo site a little bit, as I understand you guys are done monitoring it. Can't hear you.
You're on mute, Carrie.
Your phone is on mute.
Can't.
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, okay. I'm doing multiple things to be heard today, my phone and computer, and anyways. So yes, Frank Burris with OSU Extension and I took our final data set at the Gorse demonstration plots that are right there in Bandon at the edge of the airport. So we had that, how many plots? We had lots of plots. So we had eight main plots, but then lots of plots within those plots. So some of the plots were divided in 2, and then some of the herbicide plots were divided in 4. So we have lots of plots where we did all sorts of combinations of control methods. Some that we know work and some that we know don't work, but people still persist in using the methods. And we had lots of goals of putting the demonstration plots out. So the Gorse Action Group moved forward that. It was 2.5 years ago, I believe, that those were put out. And so we have data taken in the fall and in the spring. And so we have all this data, and Frank is in the process now, hoping to get it processed all by January. That'll hopefully tell the story of what works, what doesn't. He's going to try to apply some economics to it too, so some dollars of what one method costs compared to another. And so Frank is basically crunching all the numbers. It has been a really eye-opening project for me and others that have been involved with it. Some of the combinations of methods we thought, oh gosh, that won't work. They actually ended up not looking too badly. Some of the non-chemical methods, so it was coming in with big equipment, mulching it down, and then doing some mowing and then using some of the, whether it was black plastic or clear plastic. So some of those were the non-herbicide treatments. They were very interesting. We have lots of great photos of what grasses and other competition came back and what good suppression it did have in some of those non-chemical plots that we put out. So that was a surprise, I think, for some of us. And then so on the chemical end of things too, we had a new product, Vastland, came out just a couple years ago. And so I think as practitioners, we all wanted to prove to ourselves that Bassland does work. So that's a triclopyr product that has, instead of a danger label, it has a warning label, which is safer for the applicator. And then in terms of off-site movement through volatilization of the product going up and then over and landing on something else valuable, the product has that label too. So Bassland was something that we, as a group, as a Gorse Action Group, we were wanting to promote for those reasons. But we put lots of combinations of different herbicides out. One that a lot of homeowners, landowners use is crossbow. And that's one that can't be used near water. So it was like a big red flag for us of like, oh, there's lots of crossbow going out around water. We just know it's going out. Early on, the crossbow plot looked great. It looked really great up until this last data set that we took this fall. It's definitely not the winner anymore, which I was happy to see. And then some of our traditional herbicides that we use, so the triclopyr products like the Garlon 3A, which you can use around water, Garlon 4, which you can't. This is a standard practice herbicide used for shrub control. So our triclopyr products ended up being winners, including the Bassland. They all ended up being winners. And again, it's using the combination of mechanical getting in there with the machinery we just saw in the Powers video, and then following up with herbicide. Some of the plots had herbicide just applied once, follow up once a year. So we were trying to get at, okay, what's realistic for the landowner? Are they going to actually get out spring and fall, or are they going to get out once a year? And looking at budgets once a year is probably what they would be doing. So we did, we have all sorts of different angles at what was feasible for folks, what tools they would be using. And so Frank and I are going to be working on a publication once he crunches all the numbers that we can publish, certainly on the Gorse Action Group website, but then also get it out more broadly. Frank has some ideas of how we can get it out published through OSU publications, and then a few other ideas to get it out across Oregon and then across the Western US too, because I know California, Washington, Canada could also benefit from the study as well. Is that good? Any questions?
I think one of the things about the demo site, although it wasn't truly a scientific study that makes it really valuable, is that it is in the actual environment where gorse is occurring versus all of the sort of, people thinking that this works and thinking that that works. But the actual wind, rain, salt, everything else that we have here really impacts that, and the volatility and the fact that weather moves so quickly through here. So when you have a stable day in the Willamette Valley, you have a stable day pretty much. But around here, it can be two different entire weather systems, morning and afternoon. So, that I think that is good. And it also gave every single one of the people that volunteered their time there some ownership of that and a feeling of being connected to doing that. And it gave us something to do with the city of Bandon, a project to work with the city of Bandon's utility right away and a private landowner here that owns large tracts of gorse that is really frustrated. So I think there's also the airport adjacent to this site, which is a huge monoculture and potentially in the urban growth boundary, and something that needs to be addressed. So this is a lot like what the Donut Lowell looks like now in that whole area. And it could be the future that people could see what it could look like in 2 years or 4 years or whatever, because we pretty scientifically divided it up, by these things. Also to see that animal husbandry and grazing is a huge piece of that, because a lot of our gorse areas in Curry County are located on ranch land. And so we really need to get the word out to Curry County as well, that there is hope within their ranks of things that they can do to, manage large tracts. And then the homeowner who doesn't want to use chemicals, gave them an opportunity to see something that works and works well, and to head towards reclamation. We planted some trees there with the high school students. So we really touched a lot of different people in the process of doing the demo site. It was truly a collaboration, a community collaboration, that I'm pretty proud of that.
So of course, I think I falsely said it, that the non-chemical method that looked great was we mowed. It wasn't mowing, it was actually plowing. And Liza had experience with that at a property where plowing was very effective after you get rid of the big stuff. Plowing was very effective. So that's the one that was a big surprise to me personally. And then the clear and black plastic too. It was surprising how well they did and what came back on black plastic versus clear plastic in terms of competition filling in. Now we have a big decision to make, and we're not going to make it today, obviously, but of what we do with the plots. The signs are still up. Liza's trees that she carefully planted and watered are coming in. How do we maintain it? How do we work with the landowner to move forward with that site? Because we won't be actively treating it as a group, as a Gorse action group moving forward. So we'll have to make a decision. Maybe the steering committee could talk about that further. Yeah.
Thank you, Carrie.
Awesome.
Thanks for all your work on that. I think you guys
It was
and the
a fun
brainchild,
project.
you and Liza really did an amazing thing there. Does anyone else have anything they want to mention in our last 1 second?
Are the ODOT guys still on here, or one of them?
Yep.
Okay. So ODOT guys, when you're doing your training, I know Will Lackey does a lot of those trainings in-house, and all of you guys, if you would like a Gorse specific or, you know, sort of Coos and Curry County specific training thing, let's talk more about that. I've talked to Tim Lawler and Brian Wetchen about that, but you know, maybe if we have a little subsect of a local training for the guys that are managing these rights of way specifically with Jabata grass and some things like that, we can help out with the real specifics, and they could also help us out with telling us where we're missing stuff, because they see so many miles they can get ahead of some stuff, and they've been awesome partners on the Jabata grass thing down in Curry County. So and with Gorse as well. So if ODOT needs some help from me, let me know. I'm happy to do some trainings virtually or otherwise that are specific to our rural counties in Douglas Lane, coastal counties, Douglas Lane, Curry, and Coos. I can go further north, but those ones are real easy for me to do.
I'd like, this is Carrie, I'd like to, yeah, I'd like to give a shout out too to ODOT with all the work they're doing north of Bandon as well with Gorse. They did mechanical removal this summer, and then I've seen, every time I come over, I see someone spraying. It would be the, is that the Beaver Hill area down into the Coke Hill Bridge area. So they've been doing lots of work on that stretch of I-5 of 101. So shout out to ODOT.
So this is Jody from ODOT, the section you were just talking about.
Yeah, so Jody, are you regional to this area, or are you larger ODOT, big picture?
Nope, I work for Tim.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
So kind of just a rough kind of what we've been doing. Milepost, so 253 to 261.5. So kind of like she said, Beaver Hill to right there coming into Bandon. We were using the community service until COVID come along. So we got a lot of that cut and hauled off, and then some regrowth in it. And then we have sprayed all of that from 253 to 261.5. Every bit of that was sprayed this year. And then we had a plant that we found at milepost 245, and that one was removed. Another plant at 246, and that was removed. Waiting to hear back from Shutter Creek, and when we can, we'll go back to removing the rest of it that's alongside the road there.
Perfect. And Richard, if you ever had a question about how Gorse spreads from the city of Bandon as ground zero, that little stretch of highway going to the dump is exactly what our problem is. And this is why, you know, all our utilities and everybody being on the same page is so critical, because this is an example in spades of exactly what happens when it's mishandled from point of cut to dump or piece of machinery to, you know, to the next location and all that. So we have our great little vector sample there, which we're now destroying single-handedly using ODOT's resources. But it is a great model for exactly what can go wrong when you're ground zero, you know. And it looks like that every road that goes out of Bandon has that same issue, basically. So.
Connor, did you have something you wanted to say? You got cut off.
He's muted.
There he is.
Yeah, how about now?
There you go.
Hey, no, just listening there. Yeah, we don't. Hi, Jody. Yeah, that looks great up there. Down south here, we've had a couple of big projects this season. Always pressed for time. Our biggest one was coming out of the Elk River there, and we worked with the power companies and also subcontractors with mowing. We don't actually transport gorse down here for those particular reasons. We'll mow it, mulch it, take it to the ground to get the biomass down so we can control it easily, and then come in after regrowth and spray. And it works really well for us down here.
Yeah, that project down at Elk River was impressive and got a lot of people's attention. And that was great. They had a wayside right there. That was a place where air current burner would have helped them a lot, you know. So really, it was a great little program showing people how to transport it the shortest distance possible. So they basically moved it about, I don't know what, a few hundred yards to the location as they removed a massive amount of biomass from there.
Correct. Yeah, it worked out really nice. There's a lot of work with the private landowners down there as well in the cranberry bogs. We have to get everybody on board.
And Jensen's Tree Service was a subcontractor in that situation, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, and which they have received all of the training, as have Brittany and Ryan received all of the training that we've offered. They've been at every event, so that's great.
Yep.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks, Jody.
Got one more thing to add if I got a couple seconds. Also, part of that too is all of our sweeping, all of our brush mowing, anything that we do. Once we get past the 253, we hit Bandon, we turn around, we come back, and we're heading north to 253. All of those we transfer to the equipment to our stockpile sites, and those get washed really well before we take them back north of the 253 to try to keep the spread of that also.
Yep.
That's great.
ODOT is huge, and they've made a paradigm shift. You know, it really is heartening for us who do the work to see a utility that large move that quickly to make major changes in directional mowing and all that. So it's great. Your guys are doing an awesome job, just saying. Doing an awesome job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have anything they want to say? Well, I'd like to think
I've been at, Sherry and Aaron, the best one.
Yeah, Aaron.
Technical problems.
Aaron, thank you.
The best movement. So good job.
Thanks. We did cover a huge amount of territory here, so thanks everyone. This is a tough venue, but I think it might be the norm for now. And we did a great job. Thanks to Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
I didn't do a whole lot, but yeah, tag team, you know, that's, I think, the theme where GAG has gone is, you know, really sharing duties, because even this is like too much for one person. So sharing, share.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our meeting, and we will be in touch with the steering committee and everything else that's going on to the whole group as we move through some of the things, and be asking for expertise and opinions. So I hope to have you on board for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.